This isn't my design, or but I've taken it out of a book. It's called Complete Book of Wood Carving, and there's a chapter in here on sharpening, but especially on the Dockyard tools. And basically, when you sharpen these and most other carving tools, there's an angle that you want to sharpen it at, because that's the bevel on the bottom of the chisel. And for most wood carving, that ranges, it's a bevel between 20 degrees and 25 degrees. Gives the most efficient carving angle without being too brittle and chipping out the metal, or being too steep where you can't hardly push it through the wood. So there's a simple way. If you don't have a protractor, you can do like I did here with a protractor and get your angle off from that. Or if you take a sheet of paper and you fold the paper, take the one corner and bring it down to that line. And now instead of a 90-degree angle, you have 45. You fold it one more time, and you're going to be about approximately 22.5 degrees. Now that is approximately the angle that you want to take and hold the tool. And if you have one that, at the time when I did this one here, I broke one corner off that. So I spent quite a while grinding it down by hand and then trying to shape that edge on there. And this was a couple years ago, and I got it fairly good. At that time, I had a sharpening kit for a Dockyard, and it got the job done. But I can show you why I didn't really fall in love with it, because this one here uses the green sharpening compound, but it's thinned down so far that when you put it on this block, as you can see, I tried to clean as much off this little contoured block as I could, because when you brush it on there and you hold this and you put it in there and pull it back to hone that blade, next thing you know, that's compounds on the tool. It runs off the block where you're trying to hold it, and you got green hands, and the block's green, the tool's green, and you clean everything up and you think you have clean hands, and you start carving, and all of a sudden you got a couple green streaks from this compound, and that does not dry very fast, because this hasn't been used in about several years, and it still is soft, because it comes in a little metal container, and I got it wrapped up trying to keep it from leaking out, but it's kind of like a little container of Vaseline. You brush it on there, and so it's so thin. But after I learned this, what it shows in the book here, his method of honing it, if in the case I broke a chip out, you would use either a diamond stone like this, or even a credit card size diamond stone, to bring back just far enough to get past where it's broken, and possibly even start a little bit of the angle. But then once you get the angle, you take your favorite cereal is fine. Good cereal box. You can use the back of a cardboard from this, any of those, and use white compound on like that. You set approximately your 20 degrees. And that's how you can see that you're honing it. If you have a larger chisel, just something like this, where you have a much larger bevel on it, you can see better and when I'm sitting, it's not hard to keep my wrists really at the right angle, but it gives you a little bit of a visual where you can see how much of the bevel is on the surface there. And if you were down flat, you get just a little line, and if you're up on the edge, you have a line. And if you're in this, this is a 4mm gouge. With that, when you get done honing the outside, you can come back and go to the edge of the cardboard and put a little compound on the very edge. And if you have any burr on the inside, that's how you take that last little, any edge that you've curled over, take and remove that. And I think this, there's a little curl of the shaving that's and it can be done with different ones. If I was using this, now that I've tried to get as much of that green compound off that I don't like, I can use, this is a little bit pointed. I could use the same thing, get some down in there, and I can hone the edge. If there's smaller ones, they're harder to get down to, but there's about a 2mm. Let's see if I can get that any on there, down that little groove a little bit.
The block that you're dressing, is that just a series of different size diameter grooves?
Yes, this was made by somebody, the brand name is the Carving Glove Guy LLC. And he's got it marked, made it for the Dockyard tools. Number 5 gouge, 5mm, 4mm, 3mm, 2, 1.5mm, 75-degree V, and then a I think there's a 90-degree V and a 1.5mm 2 and a 3. And then it does work, like I say, the principle of the recesses or shapes are good. If you have flex tools for some of theirs, they make the same type of, and they use the yellow compound. The one that explains it in the book here, he likes to use the white compound because when he puts it on cardboard or whether it's a cereal box or a legal pad or anything else, it always turns black because that's the material that you're taking off from there. And the reason that he doesn't recommend using on the stone or power sharpening or anything else is because there's so little material there that both heat-wise, you'll take the temper out of the blade if you try and put it on a leather power hone or something like that. or you'll take and grind down, take it off so fast, pretty soon you don't have any tool left. And even though they're small, the price tag when you buy a whole set adds up to at about $15 or $20 per tool, adds up in a hurry. And this way, it's not the fastest, and you probably, if you took enough time, you could make your own honing block. But I found that for a lot of it, just if you can get close in the shape, you don't break the tool or wait till it gets so dull that you're trying to push on it. And if you push too hard with a little tool like this, you'll find that it's not as strong as you thought it was. And it's the same principle somewhat in if you have a V tool, you're going to hone on one side and then turn it. And you can take the edge of it if you don't have a block like that, put a little compound right on the edge of this. And get inside that for any burr that you might have caused on the other inside, a little hook on the other side. That should be relatively sharp. Probably needs a little bit more honing than that. That made a little difference. There's another little curly cue. And that's basically is the principle behind the micro tools that way. It's all by hand, and hopefully you don't break your tool and have to grind it off. The other things, you can do everything from the micro tools. Tried different cardboard. Feels like a little softer cardboard, but this here is OCC tool. It's relatively thin material, but it does work very nicely when it's sharp.
Difference between the yellow and white rouge?
It's a slight difference in the this I happen to get from Everett, the one that wrote the book. These come from Flex Craft with their tool sets. I don't know exactly what the difference in the hardness is. Either one, when you're working on cardboard like this, if I use yellow, it'll show up the same way.
Is that just buffing compound?
It's like a type of buffing or polishing compound. The grades are just slightly finer or coarser. It seems like mostly wood carvers used a green compound, and that's basically the same thing they make that paste from, but the green comes in a stick similar to this.
The green
And
is diameter abrasive size.
Yeah, I haven't, don't have these specs right handy. The reason for the white is to be able to see what you're doing by where you're taking the metal off, because it turns from white to black. And the yellow will work very similar, because it will show up very. I know there's different uses for it, and for my purpose for this, the color on the backing compound that we're putting it on works better. If I used a green, it will show up, but not as readily as what the white or the yellow will.
Is that available locally?
You can buy it at Woodcraft or other places. Stick this long, probably is about $6. I had, oops, I thought I had another one that I bought from Everett, because this I don't think that's his piece, but when I happened to meet him at a different carving club down in Florida and saw how he did this, I bought a stick of it from down there, and that was about the same price. So it's not all that expensive. Does make something that you don't have to carry a whole bunch of stones or stuff with you when you travel carving. You can get by with, unless you really damage a tool, some compound and cardboard cereal boxes, just as long as you have a flat surface that'll take you can rub this on, and doesn't take much to put in your toolbox and take with you. Now, some other things that I haven't tried out of this book, I've seen other people use it. He does sharpen his tools by hand, and a simplified way of doing it in this book, he takes a piece of particle board like this, cuts it 11 inches one way by 4.5 inches, and then takes sandpaper, let's see, he starts by spraying the board with spray adhesive, puts on a piece of 220 wet or dry sandpaper on that, and starts, if needs any nicks, chips, things like that in the tool, you start with a 220, and then after that he goes through 320, 400, 600, and 1200 grips of wet or dry sandpaper. And the reason he cut that block at 4.5 by 11 is takes a sheet, cuts it in half, and he has two pieces. But you can leave the 220 on there and put the 320 on top of that, and you can take a hone on top of it, and when you've got the smooth, even fine scratches on there, take the 320 off, put the 400 on, and work your way up to 1200 and get it polished like it's a mirror surface. And so basically, if you want to hand sharpen, for people that don't have a lot of money to spend on the sharpening tools, he recommends buy a fine diamond stone, whether it's either credit card size or a thicker one like this that'll last you for a lifetime, and get some sandpaper, and you can sharpen any gouges, V-tools. Take some practice, but you can hand sharpen it that way and get them very sharp. You can also sharpen almost all of the carving knives, any kind you want, and if it's got scratches or the bevel isn't quite right, you can do that on with the sandpaper till you get it down to the 1200, and then take the compound on cardboard and hone it to like a razor edge, and it'll cut as good as anything without spending a lot of money on machinery or taking all this whole bunch of oil stones or everything that you got to carry with you. And those are a way of sharpening without major investment. It's not saying the others aren't good, but if you don't know what you're doing and you take a tool like this and put it on a grinding wheel, and the next thing you know, how come that's turned blue and half the edge is gone? Well, it's because that wheel's turning so fast, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're going to go right through it and take the temper out. That's the major tips that I have on sharpening. If
Drag, then do it broad, bring it in a circle.
you mean like when you're polishing it like that?
Yeah.
If you were on here and you tried going this way, what you'll do is if you get up just a little too much, you'll start cutting into the cardboard. Well, what you're trying to do is rather than right in one spot, you're working down into more or less a new area. But you want to go across and as you go down, you're pulling, you might say, into a new area that still got fresher compound on. Otherwise, if you keep going long enough in one spot, you'll be polishing over, you might say, the fine particles of the steel that you're polishing off the blade. Because all that compound is doing is taking a small amount of metal off, a microscopic amount of metal off, and the black is the steel that's come off from the chisel. When you get done, you should be able to, almost like a mirror, be able to reflect off something and read like you were and it's just you might say how polished you can get it, and the more you polish it, the smoother it's going to get, and you can bend the cardboard a little bit to hone the inside edges if you got a little bit of a hook there. But it's I was amazed when I watched it being demonstrated, how simple it can be and how sharp of an edge you can get off a knife or chisel with a little bit, getting the edge on there and then honing that way. It's cuts very nicely, even with a fairly good sized. And I've actually used this quite a bit last year at Midland in the seminar. Took a class there with the Stenmans, and they start off the whole piece that you carve. The first thing you do is take a gouge like this and go over the whole surface and take all the planer marks out and give a little texture to the surface before you do the shallow relief carving that they do. And so it had a lot of use there, and then I carved a bunch of butternut on another carving I did last fall, and I was quite happy, how well the sharpening works with this cardboard method.
Call that set of gouges by a name? I've never heard that name before. No, not the brand name, the Dockyard?
The Dockyard tools.
Yeah, what's the history of that?
Probably about 10 years ago, I don't know what the company was or the name of the company, but they made these micro tools and sold them under the Dockyard brand name.
Okay.
And probably lasted about 8 or 10 years. Approximately 2 years ago, they went out of business. And there are some other companies that scrambled trying to come up with a small gouges. I think Flexcraft is a brand name that came up with a few, and I don't know, there's some other ones. And about less than a year ago, somebody bought out the rights to Dockyard, and they're back in business again. But they aren't, like I say, they're from $15 to $20 per individual tool, maybe some a few more, and they make probably about, well, I don't know how many I got in there, about 6 in a, so I probably got about 12 of them, and some of them I bought, some years ago and bought them in a set of 5, but they are compact, fairly nice, and they serve a purpose where you're doing small detail work. But if you're getting in there and you think you got a chisel like this and you're trying to get in and cut that little tiny thing out there and get in, and you twist like that, you find out that that little tip is not very strong. So you have to respect what you're using. If you got something like this, these are made, you can use with a mallet, or I use a lot of the chisel work that I do with a chisel like that, and I use 2 hands on it versus a mallet. That's just the way I like to carve. But there's times where a big tool just isn't going to do the job, and you got to get down with something real small. And the Dockyard does make other tools that would sharpen very similar, like the gouges. Some of these are V tools. They've got little hook knife, a couple skews, and they got some dog leg shapes. Just a variety of tools to fit different situations. And it all comes down to finding a way to keep them sharp, and something way of sharpening it without grinding all the tip away and wearing it out before it's time.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.